So as we continue on with our discussions on the Civil War tie-ins, we of course pick up with Wolverine with Volume 3, issue number 46. And of course in issue number 45, we had talked about how Nitro had been handed over to Namor the Submariner and the Atlanteans in order for them to exact their retribution against him for the death of Namorita. But what Namor the Submariner has also done is given Wolverine the information that he was looking for. He of course tells Wolverine that Damage Control Incorporated were the ones that had given Nitro the mutant growth hormone that was used to allow him to inflict so much damage in Stamford, Connecticut. And Wolverine's also informed that the CEO of the company is a man named Walter Delkin. And so what Wolverine does is he goes to the headquarters of Damage Control Incorporated and asks to see Walter. Now Wolverine is taken to I guess the main office of the building, but he's not actually meeting with Walter Delkin in this instance. Instead, he meets with a woman named Anne-Marie Hogue. And Anne-Marie says that she's the president of the company. And what this means is that Damage Control Incorporated, or the subsidiary of Damage Control Incorporated in which she's in charge of, is the company she has control of. But because Walter Delkin owns that company along with a multitude of others, Walter Delkin is the CEO. And so again, he is the top authority here. Anne-Marie tells Wolverine that he has about 5 minutes to explain why it is that he's here. And what Wolverine does is he shows her the mutant growth hormone that he had taken from Nitro. And what Wolverine tells Anne-Marie is that, of course, he had taken this from Nitro, which is I guess a drug of sorts that gives normal humans abilities and enhances the abilities of those that already have them. And he says that this was given to Nitro in order for Nitro to, I guess, use his power to cause a massive amount of damage and to start the entire situation that led to the Superhuman Registration Act in the first place. But what this seems interesting here, what makes this kind of a surprise, is that Anne-Marie seems as though she didn't know this. It seems as though she had no idea this was actually taking place. And in fact, she goes as far as to explain to Wolverine that the recession had hit her company very hard. And so Walter Delkin and his investors had bought the controlling stake of her company. And so while she is the president of the company, she's more or less a figurehead here. And that all the power rests in the hands of Walter Delkin. And that Walter Delkin had eventually made his way into the position of CEO. But before she's able to explain too much further, we see that Walter Delkin joins both her and Wolverine. And what Walter Delkin tells her is to stop talking, and that Wolverine needs to get out of here. But again, Wolverine refuses to leave. Wolverine doesn't go. Of course, his intention here is to perhaps maybe exact some kind of revenge on Walter Delkin. Now, what Walter Delkin tells Wolverine is that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s response time for a 911 call is 3 minutes, and that he had called 3.5 minutes ago. And so again, Wolverine talks about how the idea here is to initially leave, but it seems as though he has an ulterior motive here. Maybe there's some kind of a plan that he had that we're not entirely aware of. But what we learn is that Wolverine, as he was going through the company, or I guess going through the building, had installed some kind of a data transmitter, a device that would allow him to capture various forms of information. And what we learn as he transitions to Forge's workshop is that this data transmitter was designed to capture information from Damage Control Incorporated, and that the information that was given to, or I guess that was attained on this data miner, tells us more or less what's been going on as far as Damage Control Incorporated's involvement with the Superhuman I guess Registration Act. And what we learn here is that Damage Control Incorporated have been given a contract by the federal government for the purpose of cleaning up after superheroes and villains whenever it was that they engaged in conflicts. But from the time that Damage Control Incorporated had first been given their contract, they had basically been instigating a set of situations whereby superheroes and villains would engage in confrontation when they normally wouldn't. And so for Damage Control Incorporated, the passage of the Superhuman Registration Act was a goldmine. It meant that they would be the ones who would be given the contract for cleaning up after superheroes. They would be the ones given the contract for making sure that superheroes are trained, for making sure that superheroes are prepared for the role that they will have to undertake as agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And so this would be a very lucrative situation. And so what Forge more or less tells Wolverine, and what Wolverine tells us, is that this is all about money. This is all about Damage Control Incorporated using their contract to make as much money as they possibly can. And Wolverine's very angry about this. Wolverine's very upset because what he tells us is that he's seen this kind of thing before. He's seen that whenever there's any kind of a conflict, there's always going to be people who are going to try to profit off of that conflict. And this is yet another instance. But again, when he tells Forge what it is that he wants to do, Forge says that this is not as simple as just going after one man. That if Walter Delkin is killed, that something's going to happen whereby another person will simply just take his place. And Wolverine says he's already thought about this. And he says that just like anything else, just like going after some kind of artificial program or artificial entity, in the end, the only thing you can do is simply just chop it down to pieces to the point that it just can't reconstitute itself. And this is when we see Wolverine going through these actions, going through this plan. What Wolverine initially does here is he goes to the storage warehouse for a lot of the equipment that Damage Control Incorporated has, and he destroys the equipment. What he also does is he travels to a bank in Grand Cayman, and what he does with this bank is he effectively forces them to surrender their, assets in terms of what Damage Control Incorporated is holding overseas. Again, this may very well be an instance of Damage Control Incorporated using tax shelters in order to avoid taxation. But again, the head of the bank tells Wolverine that this is not a very simple thing. That even if Wolverine is able to take away the funds that Damage Control Incorporated has, that those funds are insured, and so in the end, it's not going to make any difference. That the money is going to be given back to Damage Control Incorporated, and they're going to continue about their business. But what we see is that once Wolverine is successfully able to seize the money that Damage Control Incorporated has in Grand Cayman, that he goes after their West Haven Mutual Fund. He goes after the insurance company that is insuring the money that Damage Control Incorporated has set aside. Now from here, we switch back to the headquarters of Damage Control Incorporated with Walter Delkin. And Walter Delkin is of course talking to one of his aides, and his aide is saying that again, another one of their assets has been attacked. Another one of their assets is liquidating all of the holdings of Damage Control Incorporated stock, which is in effect driving down the value of the company, which of course will result in the existing investors pulling out, and most likely the company resulting in having to go bankrupt. But of course, what we see Walter Delkin doing is organizing a situation, organizing a set of circumstances whereby they can force whoever this individual is that is sabotaging their assets into a trap. And of course, again, at this time, they don't know that it's Wolverine. Now from here, what we learn is that Walter Delkin, by a mishmash of using, public relations as well as finance, more or less goes public in saying that they have purchased a building for a new headquarters. And this, as we learn, is actually a trap that's been set up by Walter Delkin. Of course, Wolverine buys into the bait, and when he arrives at the building, he's immediately ambushed by several individuals using Stark Tech that are, attempting to eliminate Wolverine. But what we also learn with this story is that in addition to the armor and technology that they also have weapons on their arms that are composed of adamantium, which is, of course, as Wolverine explains it to us, the only thing that can cut through adamantium, similar to how a diamond can only cut another diamond. And so as Wolverine is going against these foes, one of the individuals uses the blade on the top of his hand to begin the process of severing Wolverine's head off, which of course is where this particular comic comes to an end. Now from here, we pick up with Wolverine Volume 3, issue number 47. And with issue number 47, of course, we pick up directly where we left off with issue number 46, which is of course the conflict between Wolverine and these henchmen. And Wolverine, as he is going through this, seems to have been defeated. It seems as though, as these individuals are telling us, that his head is hanging on by a thread, and so Wolverine is no longer a threat to them. Of course, they begin celebrating, and they begin relishing in the fact that they have presumably killed Wolverine, when they turn to the third member of their team who had apparently been killed by Wolverine. Now, of course, as they try to tell him to hang in there, as they try to tell him to keep himself, keep himself alive, it appears as though he's trying to tell them something. Initially, they can't make out what it is, but once they get close enough to hear what it is that he's saying, someone behind them pipes up and says that that this individual that was laying unconscious was saying, "Watch out behind you." And at this point, we learned that Wolverine is now joined with Janice, as well as another one of the Atlanteans. And from here, we see, of course, that Janice, alongside this blonde Atlantean, are able to fight with Wolverine in order to take out these other other henchmen in order to take out these other individuals. Now, initially, Wolverine, once he heals himself, jumps back into the fray again, but almost immediately after he jumps into the conflict, we see that the group is joined by Robert Reynolds, by the Sentry, who of course is fighting on the side of Iron Man here. And the Sentry tells Wolverine to stand down. He tells Wolverine that he doesn't need to engage in any action here. Of course, Wolverine says that, again, he's on a much larger crusade than anything that is as trivial as revenge, but for the most part, Robert Reynolds is again carrying out the role of S.H.I.E.L.D. And so Robert Reynolds and Wolverine get into a hand-to-hand conflict. Now, this is a very interesting situation here, because what we have is a being as powerful as Robert Reynolds, who is in effect able to do almost anything the Incredible Hulk is able to do, who's going toe-to-toe with Wolverine, who can heal from pretty much anything. And so the question becomes, what would happen? Who would come out on top? Now, of course, as the story continues and as this comic continues, we inevitably see that Wolverine is, taken over by Robert Reynolds and is defeated. And in the end, he's taken captive by S.H.I.E.L.D. and taken to the main S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, where he's confronted by Maria Hill. Now, Maria Hill tells Wolverine that, again, that he's made a mistake here, that he's fighting on the wrong side, that the right side here is to fight on the side of Iron Man, and that in the end, the idea here of him going after Walter Delkin is a stopgap measure, that there's no real effort here, there's nothing to really be gained here, that even if Walter Delkin was killed, that Damage Control Incorporated would continue to go on, and that S.H.I.E.L.D. would be the ones to make sure that that happens. In addition, we also see her, maybe egging on Wolverine a little bit, almost mocking him, telling him that, again, there's nowhere for him to go, that the entire situation here has been set up in such a way to where he is at the behest of S.H.I.E.L.D. But Wolverine confronts this. Wolverine says that he's going to slice through the shackles that have been placed on his arms. He's in turn going to take Maria Hill's sidearm, and that he's going to escape. And Maria Hill says that this is not going to happen. And the reason is because the collar that he has around his neck keeps him from being able to use his powers. And Wolverine responds by telling her that this is the mistake that everybody makes. And when she asks him what it is, he says the mistake is assuming that his claws are a superpower. At this point, Wolverine's claws break loose out of the shackles, and he's able to escape his binds, and then takes Maria Hill hostage, as well as takes her gun. And so what he does is simply blow a hole in one of the windows and then jump out. And so from here, we of course see that as Wolverine is making his way to the bottom, that he is landing in New York City proper. At this point, we transition back to Damage Control Incorporated to Anne Marie as well as Walter Delkin. And it seems as though Anne Marie is confronting Walter Delkin and trying to find a way to force him out, to oust him as the CEO. Of course, she's citing the fact that the company's hemorrhaging money, and that under the leadership of Walter Delkin, the company appears to be faring for the worst, to the point that it's almost at the verge of bankruptcy. But of course, Walter Delkin says that he's not going to step down, that the only way that he would step down is over his cold dead body, which of course we see Wolverine willing to oblige when he makes himself known to everybody in the room. Now at this point, Wolverine and Walter Delkin get into this kind of discussion back and forth, where Walter Delkin says that if Wolverine's intention is to kill him, then he better do it quickly. And Wolverine of course says that he has every reason to kill Walter Delkin, that of course Walter Delkin's actions resulted in Nitro destroying a large portion of Stamford, Connecticut, which of course led to the implementation or the introduction of the Superhuman Registration Act. But before either of them actually engage in a conflict, Walter Delkin consumes some of the mutant growth hormones and gives himself abilities. And with these abilities, he begins engaging in hand-to-hand combat with Wolverine. Now, initially, we don't really know what powers it is that he gets. We don't know exactly what kind of abilities he gains, but it seems that for the most part, due to his ability to go toe-to-toe physically with Wolverine, that he gains some measure of enhanced strength, some kind of super strength. But again, on the streets of New York City, Walter Delkin and Wolverine begin going against one another. They begin fighting one another and engaging in hand-to-hand combat. And the fight seems quite brutal, and it seems quite even. We of course see that Wolverine is simply just pummeling Walter Delkin, but Walter Delkin is also getting hits in as well. But again, as the conflict continues, Wolverine begins to gain the upper hand. And when he begins to gain the upper hand, he has Walter Delkin in a position whereby he's able to kill him. But what we learn is that Wolverine has actually almost the entire time been talking to Miriam, who of course is the mother of one of the children who had been killed in Stamford, Connecticut and the person who had been on the side, or I guess who had spat in the face of Tony Stark earlier in the Civil War event. And so we ultimately see that Wolverine kills Walter Delkin. And when he does, he of course talking to Miriam, says that he doesn't really regret this one thing, that while he regrets a lot of the mistakes that he's made, while he regrets a lot of the things that he's done, this is one thing that he believes he's done right, which of course brings an end to the Wolverine portion of the Civil War event. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and bring this video to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, let me know, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.